Hello and welcome back. The new shed is going really well and I'm starting to use it a lot more now. But I have one major issue in there. Let me show you what the issue is. This is a small table next to my wood lathe, and as you can see here I've got chucks on it, rulers, centers and a whole bunch of other tools, and it's just a mess. If you'd seen one of my recent videos, you would have seen that I've upgraded a couple of my chucks with the infinity clip-on jaws. So now I have boxes of jaws which need to be sorted out as well. My face shield is hanging on some chisels and blocking other chisels. And I've run out of space in this chisel rack, so now I've got chisels behind other chisels. Where do you normally keep your tool rests? Well, mine are on the floor, so they need somewhere to go. Moving away from the wood turning tools, here are some other tools lying on the floor. This is mainly because I have no bench space in this new shed, so I've got nowhere to put tools on top of or in cupboards or anything like that. But I have an idea and we're going to deal with the storage issue here. French cleats. I've seen a bunch of videos on these and these look like a fantastic storage solution. Now this is not my idea, apparently these have been around since the 1800s. For my wood turning area I want to put French cleats from the edge of the window all the way across to the other corner of the wall, so past those tools that are hanging up, and then come around the back wall to the left hand side of the window. There's a dropper going to go down there with blast gates, so we can't go past that. And then some French cleats behind the bandsaw there for jigs and things like that. In addition, I have this other wall here in between the ducting that I want to put some French cleats in there as well. At our wood turning meeting the other night, I asked if anyone had a track saw that I could borrow. One of the guys there said, well, all we do is normally clamp down a straight edge and use the skill saw, and that comes out pretty good. So that's what I'm doing here. This piece of plywood is 21mm thick and 2.7 meters long. So you just cut slowly and just hold a bit of pressure on the straight edge and the cuts come out really good. So thank you very much, Terry. That was a great idea and worked well. I'm down to the last cut and there is this piece that's sticking up on the board, a bit of damage. So I'm just trying to chop that out so that the straight edge can sit flat on the board. From the complete board I got 7 pieces that are 150mm wide, and there's that last bit with the damaged part, and that is 130mm wide. So that piece will be used for maybe some cleats on the back of the tool holders. These 150mm boards will be cut down the centre, 45-degree angle, and that'll give me 2 cleats about 3 inches wide. I'm going to do that on the table saw, but I'm just going to wait for a friend to come over to help me out because I'm not too confident on the table saw at the moment. This is a Delta Rockwell Model 34-425. We got this out on the driveway, set up the angle 45 degrees, we turned it on and the belt came off. Now I don't know if this is the original position of the motor, but when the arbor and blade are tilted to 45 degrees, the motor stays horizontal. So the 2 pulleys are then not straight in line, they're angled. As you can see in this picture, we've got the pulley at 45 degrees, and the previous picture the motor was still horizontal. I don't know if this is how it's supposed to work, and it was just unlucky that the belt came off. So if anyone's got one of these machines, please let us know in the comments. Anyway, if you haven't seen this guy in one of my previous videos, his name's O'Day, he's a builder, and he's come along to help out, and he's bought his own table saw. And we're basically cutting those pieces of wood straight down the middle on 45 degrees. That is all the wood that's been cut up, and they're all cleats. Now the sharp angle on the 45 there needs to be cut down, and my friend O'Day had loaned me this nice heavy duty little plane, but I'm sure there's an easy way of doing this job, and there sure is. I've pulled out the planer or jointer you say in the US, and I clean up all those edges much faster than doing it the manual way. Here are most of the cleats. I still have some outside ready to be stained, and if you're wondering why we don't have many long ones, well, it's because the piece of plywood that I had was not the best and it had some twists in it. So on the 45 degrees you had issues where if there was a high part then you'd have a bit of a hump here, and if there was a low part like on this other piece then you'd have a bit of a valley. So a lot of these parts were cut out of the longer pieces. Once I have all of the cleats machined and ready to install, I stain them with this Quila stain. Now I'm ready to fit the cleats to the wall, so marking off about 800 high here for the lowest cleat. Then that's put in place. I pre-drill and screw this in. I had to go find a screw. And where I can, I screw the cleats into the studs behind the wall. And it's just a matter of stacking them on top of each other with the spacers and screwing them all up. Takes a bit of time. Here you can see I've got the spacers in place, and that gives me consistent height and keeps it all parallel. After a bit of time we get to the end, and that's 2 walls there, and then we sort of stop on the other side of the window, and then there's this little bit here on the left, and that's where the bandsaw will be. So all the bandsaw jigs will hang on that part. Now we need to make the tool holders. The first one is the chisel holder, and I'm using the existing one because it's got all the holes cut out. I'm just going to attach it to a backboard like this, and then of course the cleat will go on the back. I've glued that up, and that backing board gets pinned to the tool holder, and unfortunately the gun wasn't firing for I don't know what reason. There we go. Now it was a little bit bowed, so I had to put a clamp on this end. And once that was all sorted out, I could put the rest of the pins in. Now there were some that poked out the side, I'm not really sure why, and I couldn't get them out. So if in doubt, just grind them off. Now I've glued up the backing board, and that's where the cleat will get pinned to. No pins came out the side this time. Also put about 3 screws in the back here as well, just to give it some more support. Make sure you don't hit the camera. That fits on the wall perfect, and the tools can go back in. And that's the first tool holder complete for the wood turning chisels. The next tool holder I want to make are for all of these centres. And I've got this piece of wood, I'm going to drill some holes in here, and then the centres can just sit in the holes. It'll go onto a backing board, pretty much like the other one we just made, and then a cleat on the back. Now I might need to put triangle supports on the ends here. I'll drill those holes out using a smaller drill to start with and work my way up to 18mm. I test out a few of the centres in the holes and they work out pretty good. So that's glued up. That backing board is pinned in much the same way. Now I'm putting the cleat on, and again with the pin gun. I've used glue here with the triangle supports as well, so no screws in this one. It should be strong enough, I think. And this one here is a Nova head aligning tool, and then all the rest of them are drive centres and rotating centres. I guess I could have got a little bit fancy and rounded the corners off here. Now there's one little issue, and that is that these are on a taper, so when you lift them up they get a bit stuck and the whole tool holder can come out. So I've got this little spacer that can go in the back, and that locks it all in. The next job is to get all of these tool rests off the floor and get them up into a tool holder on the French cleat. I've made this piece here with these holes. They look a bit random, and the tool rests will fit through the holes there, just like that. And I have a whole bunch of different sizes, so that's why the holes look in random places. Now this wedge here will be between this part and that backing board to give it some support. I've glued and pinned the backing board to the tool holder for the tool rests, and now I'm driving in a few screws for extra support. These triangular supports are installed, one on each end and also one in the middle. The cleat is glued and nailed on. Now my gun ran out of nails here, so take two. Right, new nails in the gun, and that works a lot better. So a couple of pins, and then I drive in some longer screws for support. I let that dry overnight and then bring it in and hang it on a cleat. Now these holes here, they got a bit chewed out on the edges, but I'm not too worried about that. The tool holders go in, they all work out pretty good, and there's 6 of them all together. I learnt from my last tool holder, and on this one I've rounded off the edges. I was staring at the chucks and the jaws on the floor here for ages, trying to work out in my head what I was going to do with this. I came up with a 2-tier system, chucks on top and the jaws on the bottom, and I'm going to work on the jaws first. As you saw, I laid out all the jaws, and I've now marked out the holes that need to be cut. These are mostly 76mm, but there are a couple of holes, 91 and 106mm, which I do not have a hole saw for. This is the top piece, will have holes in it, and there's the bottom piece, and then the jaws will fit into the top piece here, and they'll be nice and secure. I cut out the first hole, and that cut out pretty well, so no problems there. This is the top piece, and it will be glued to this bottom piece, and the jaws will fit in here like this, and I've got to say this is awesome. So I go ahead and cut out the other 5 holes at 76mm. Now for the larger holes I had to resort to a scroll saw, so thank you very much Dick for loaning me your scroll saw a few months ago for some other job, and I still have it. The 2 largest jaws do not sit flat, so I've used a router here to cut out some cutaways, and the jaws sit nice and flat on that board now. The last part is to glue the top to the bottom, and we do that and put a heap of clamps on it, and I'll let that dry overnight. The lower tier is pretty much complete. The jaws are nicely recessed into the top layer here, so that worked out pretty good. Now what I want to do is put a small angle on the back here so that the jaws can be tilted towards the person who's reaching for them. I'll do that a little bit later once I get the holder for the chucks finished. I've marked out where the chucks go on this one, and there's enough space for an extra chuck here if someone is willing to give me one. These are 100mm, and they're going to be cut out with the scroll saw. And then of course the chuck will sit down below or inside this piece of wood, and there'll be another layer at the bottom to stop it falling through. Down the far end I'm going to put a few holes here for the different types of chuck keys. I have the 2 boards clamped together, and the reason why is because I need these center holes here to be drilled right through both boards, because when I cut out the big hole there'll be a smaller hole on the bottom board that needs to be drilled in the right place. These are the holes for the chuck keys, and I've drilled these little holes at the top here so that I can get the scroll saw blade through and cut those out. Just tidying up the last one here, and then that's pretty much finished. This is the bottom board, and I need to cut out some holes for the Nova inserts to go through so that the chucks will sit down into that recess. Just clamped together at the moment, but this is how the chucks will go in, and they'll be nice and secure in there. Of course I'll have it tilted up just like the jaws tier that I made earlier. I did the glue up off camera and put a whole heap of clamps on here, so I'll let that dry now. Not a very good video this one, but I'm just planing a slight angle on both of these chuck and jaw pieces. I've glued the cleat and that gets fitted to the back board. I've got a line there and pretty much just put some pins in there and then come back and add a few screws as well. Off camera I put this piece on and that's how it sort of angles there, which makes the chucks more presentable to the person who is using them. Some more screws go into the chuck holder just for support. I also fitted the holder for the jaws off camera, and I've put these bits on the side here for support for the two layers because there's quite a bit of weight in here. The jaws fit in there like that, and the chucks go on the top level, and then some tools for the chucks. I'm pretty happy how this one turned out. Nice angle there, so the chucks and jaws are easily accessible. I've got all these Forstner bits that were in little red plastic boxes, and I want to put them into a holder. The good thing is they're all got numbers on them, but the bad thing is these shanks here, they're all funny sizes. That's why I've sorted them like this, because the ones above and below are different sizes. So when I drill the holes I have to use 3 or 4 different sizes here. I'm going to mount the Forstner bits on this small piece of Queeler. So I start to mark that off with a pencil and couldn't really see the mark, so I used a white twink pen. I'll drill out those first row of holes, and some of these holes I had to change the drill bit to slightly bigger. So they're all done, and I've set up the second row of Forstner bits, and I've kind of evenly spaced them here. So again, these get marked out for where I need to drill them. Once the second row have been drilled, the last row are marked out. Now this one at the end here needs to have the hole forward a bit because it's so wide it will go off to the back and hit the backing plate. Once all the holes are drilled, the Forstner bits are put in, and that looks pretty good. I've used the planer to put an angle on here, and that goes onto the backing board, glued and pinned. Now we put the cleat on, lots of glue on there. A few pins from the pin gun to hold it in place. I was sort of regretting doing this because I'm screwing into Queeler, which is quite hard and can split very easily. But I did drill a pilot hole here, and this worked out pretty good. That goes up on the wall, and I fill it up with the Forstner bits. Now I've placed this next to the lathe and in reach of the drill press as well, so I can use it from either machine. Well, there are the 5 tool holders that I've done so far, and I think these came out pretty good. I changed some designs as I went through. I like the angle on here, and this one here I rounded the corners off, and also ran a NT2 reamer through there so that these bits don't get stuck. Now I didn't have enough cleats left over to do this wall, so I'll get some more cut in the future and we'll do that at a later date. There's still a bunch more cleats to make. I have measuring equipment and pencils and pens and verniers, face plates, screw chucks, other chucks, and you know what? I didn't do one for my face mask, but that might come in another video. Anyway, I hope everyone has a great day, and once again, thanks for watching.